I Will Make You Proud by Wheredoesshego. Read to you by Hummingbird Audio. Trigger warning. This fic includes talk of suicide, talk of abuse, and potential sexual content. Please read with care. Chapter 19. I don't want to let them in. Hermione, June 1997. Draco's lips crashed into Hermione's. It wasn't a hesitant kiss this time. His weight pressed down on her, and she could feel every muscle in his long, lean body, the power behind each movement as he stole her breath with bruising, soul-crushing kisses. She didn't hold back either. She pulled Draco tighter to her, the air burning in and out of her lungs as she wrapped herself around him and pulled his face closer to hers. Her fingers wound tightly into his hair. Draco's breathing was ragged, forearms flexing as he held himself over her, kissing, licking, and sucking his way down her neck to her collarbones. She felt the soft strands of his hair brush over the sensitive area just below her ear as he kissed the juncture of her shoulder. "Oh, God, Draco," she said, but it came out as a soft moan. Hermione had never, ever wanted something or someone so badly. She felt like she was going to combust. Draco lifted his head momentarily. "Tell me to stop," he breathed. His voice hitched on his shuddering exhale. "What?" she asked, pulling him back to her. "I said tell me to stop when you want me to, because I don't think I'll be able to stop by myself." His eyes were glassy, heavy-lidded. "I don't want you to stop, Draco. Please don't stop." He closed his eyes at her words and swore quietly under his breath. He brought a hand up now and placed his palm flat against her pounding heart. She shook under his gaze, shivering as his hand slowly moved lower, trailing down, grazing over her curves to grip her waist, his long fingers firm, wrapping halfway around her body. Hermione became even more aware of him pressing hard between her legs. She wriggled against him, desperate for more friction. He pushed his hips towards her, and she inhaled sharply, every nerve tingling with sensation. She let her own hands travel down now, over his back, feeling the hard knots of muscles as he held himself over her. She brought her hand around and slowly moved her fingers to the buttons of his shirt. She kissed him as she began undoing them slowly. Draco faltered, his kisses suddenly becoming less frantic, less passionate. She undid the last button and began to push his shirt back, her eyes still closed as she kissed him. All she could think about was finally getting to feel him, for real this time. As she peeled it off, she heard him suddenly suck in a sharp breath between his teeth, the unmistakable sound of pain. She stopped. "Draco, are you okay?" He didn't stop kissing her, didn't miss a beat, but even through her haze, she realized something was wrong. She put her hands up to his shoulders to pull him back, to get them both back to where they had been. And as she did, she suddenly jerked her hand away, a small cry of surprise leaving her mouth. Hermione opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They were wet, sticky with blood. An awful, crushing realization came to her then. His scars, the septum sempra. He had only been cursed weeks before. She moved back slightly, making sure that she didn't put her palms down on the bed, sitting up so that she could see him. Draco's face had closed, an angry, hurt disappointment clouding his features. "Draco," she said quietly. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Now that she could see him, she realized how far away from healing he was. Their activities had opened several of the deep slashes on his torso and back. His black shirt had covered the bleeding, soaked up and hidden the blood that was seeping out, dripping in slow rivulets down his chest. His pale skin was stained crimson, smeared around the deep, half-healed slices of the curse. "Oh, Draco!" She couldn't help clapping a hand to her mouth, leaving his blood smeared on her own face now. "Granger, it's fine. Please don't," he said, his voice quiet. "It's not fine, Draco. You're bleeding." He suddenly jerked back from her and stood up. His face had changed. He looked furious. His shoulders were squared, his mouth a thin line as he looked around on the floor, seeing and snatching his shirt up, sliding it on over his arms and shrugging it over his shoulders. Hermione couldn't fathom how it had all gone so wrong. She felt tears prick at her eyes. Draco looked over at her then, and his face softened. "Shit, Granger, I'm sorry," he said. He looked upset that she was upset. He came to sit next to her on the bed and dropped his head into his hands. "Less than an hour with me and you already crying. This is what I meant when I said I wanted you to stay away. Stay with Potter and Weasley. They don't make you cry." "I'm not crying because of you, Draco. I'm crying for you." Hermione's throat was thick with tears. "I just wish you didn't have to suffer so much. I'm upset to see you bleeding. It's so much worse knowing that Harry did that to you." Draco looked at her, his eyes guarded, seemingly amazed that she cared so much. She realized how hard his brain must be working to process her change of heart, how sudden it must seem for him. He blew out a long breath. "This is what I do, Granger," he said eventually, his voice resigned. "I bleed." "Draco, please don't say that." "It's true," he said with a small shrug. "You've supposedly seen my life, seen what it was like when I was younger. I bleed, Granger. I'm good at it. I bleed and I bruise and I take the hits so that other people don't have to. And I've done a good job of it. Did a good job of it, according to your notes. You got to 26 and you're still alive. Happy, healthy." Hermione felt like her heart was breaking as she listened to him speak. "Stop!" "No, Granger. All I've wanted to do since I first saw you on the train, you with your ridiculously beautiful hair and your kind eyes, is to keep you safe. And I did, it seems. And now you've come back here, back to danger, because you want to save me?" His face was incredulous. "Granger, there's no saving me. There's no helping me. I don't know what the fuck adult me was thinking, showing you my life, making you think that there's hope for me, some sort of redemption, because there's not. And there never has been." He yanked up his sleeve, angling his arm so that she could see the dark mark, stark against his pale skin. "I'm meant for this life. I've been bred for it, trained for it. I'm not surprised that I killed myself. I'm just shocked I even lasted that long. You shouldn't have done this. Should have carried on as you were, far away from me." His voice broke on his next words. "You made it so that it was all for nothing, Granger. What if it all goes wrong this time and I fail? What if something happens to you? At least before, I'd have died happy because you were happy." Hermione's tears ran in rivers down her cheeks. She felt like she'd never stop. Had she made a mistake? No, she couldn't accept a life where he was dead. He was wrong. She wouldn't be happy. Not now. Not now she knew him, had seen his heart. You deserve more than that, Draco. You deserve to live, to know love. You deserve happiness too. He laughed a bitter laugh. I'm a Death Eater, Granger. Tomorrow I've got to do a job that will ruin so many lives. Don't say I deserve happiness. I'm not like real people. I'm a commodity, nothing more. Stop! She screamed, clapping her hands over her ears. Draco stopped, his eyes open wide, and he just looked at her. Stop speaking like there's no hope, Draco! You've been made to feel like you've got no choice, but you do. I'm here now. I've come for you. I can help you. We can find a way to change things for you. She cast her eyes around in desperation. Oh, we can run away together. To separate somewhere far away. Draco closed his eyes. He squeezed them shut like he was in pain. Granger, you have no idea how good that sounds to me. How much I fucking want that. But I'm marked. It's not that simple for me. Voldemort is in my house. He's got my mother. Do you really think he'll just let me go? All I'll be doing is painting a target on my back, and an even bigger one on yours. If anyone knew how much I care about you... He broke off. We need to find a way to stop the war, Draco. To stop Dumbledore dying. You can stay at Hogwarts, away from your family. We can be together. You can be happy. His eyes were cast down. His shoulders sagged. She reached her hand out to his, ran her own fingers through his long, elegant ones, feeling the cold metal of his ring. He looked down at their linked fingers, and the sight of them seemed to bring him even more pain. I just want you to be happy, Draco. Please, don't give up. Fight. He brought his eyes back up to hers. I think this must be a dream, he said. I'm going to wake up in a minute and I'll be fucking spooning knot or something. You aren't real. This is my mind tricking me. Hermione brought her other hand up and caressed his face, running her hand over the small white scar, the only small blemish on his perfect pale face. It is real, Draco. I'm real. He stared into her eyes, and he seemed to be wavering. She stared back into the deep silver pools, and she willed him to trust her, to let her in. Eventually, he sat back. He took their joined hands and lifted them, inspecting them before letting her hand go. He shook his head, then he let it hang, his elbows on his knees. He looked at the floor, seeming to be trying to gather himself. I don't want to kill him, he said eventually. I know that. I want to stay at Hogwarts with you. I've only just got you. I don't want to leave you. I want that too, Draco. So much. But they're coming. I don't know how I can stop them from coming. What reason I can give for not opening the cabinet. Even if I put it off, I'll have to do it eventually, or they'll just come for me another way. I can't hide here indefinitely. And if Voldemort uses legitimacy on anyone, he'll see. So open it, she said. He lifted his head. His eyes flashed to her. Open it, but we will be ready for them. You can hold them off, distract them. I can go ahead of you to the astronomy tower and tell Dumbledore what's happening. And we can get the order here, ready to stop the Death Eaters before they attack the school. We can stop the war from even starting. Think of how many people we could save. Draco looked doubtful. But in your journals, it says that I went on to kill Voldemort. That's a good thing, isn't it? But you died anyway, Hermione said. And she hated herself for it, but she needed him to understand. You didn't get any happiness, Draco. You died alone. You killed your father, your mother was insane, and you lived a life on the run. A murderer. I want to save you. I want to bring you happiness, to be with you. You are so much more than you've been made to think you are. Let the Order take care of Voldemort. Help them. It doesn't have to be you, Draco. He looked stricken. He was utterly torn. His eyes burned into hers as he seemed to be battling between what he wanted to do and what he'd been conditioned to believe he had to do. Granger, he said, and her heart broke at the desperation in his voice. My mother, I can't leave her. She looked at him. He couldn't be serious. Your mother? He nodded slowly. You won't leave her. After everything she's put you through, after what I've seen, you won't leave her. She stared into his face. His eyes were round, the silver of his irises crystal clear. She watched as they filled. A single tear slipped down his cheek. Hermione's heart stopped as she watched it track down his face. He shook his head. I can't. Draco. He still loved his mother. She had neglected him, watched Lucius beat him to a pulp, had left him broken and alone from the age of 6, and he still wouldn't leave her. Hermione could never pretend to understand it, but she could accept it. She'd have to. She looked at the beautiful broken boy in front of her, and she knew she'd take him any way she could get him. His heart was something so precious that it still had the capacity for love despite all he had been put through. Hermione felt like she would die for him. She watched the tear, tracked its path, and she thought that she would do anything at all for him. Being with Draco, even for this short time, had confirmed all the feelings she had had through watching the memories. He was hers. She was his. He was hers. And she would do whatever it took to be with him. She heard Draco's breathing begin to pick up pace. It became uneven, rapid. He struggled to hold her eye. His chest began to visibly rise and fall, and she saw his face pale. He suddenly sprang up from the bed and began pacing. She watched his hands come up to his heart. She knew the signs. It was all too much. He was panicking. Granger, I can't. His words stuttered as he tried to speak around his heaving breaths. His other hand came up to grip his hair. His eyes were wide. He swayed slightly. Hermione jumped up. Draco, it's okay. Please, it's okay. Breathe, I'm here. She rubbed a hand slowly over his arm, scared to touch him anywhere else in case she hurt him. He looked to her again, but he couldn't get a hold of it. His breath began wheezing. He swayed a little more. She could see that he wasn't getting enough air. He was going to pass out. She put her hands up as if she could catch him. He was at least a foot taller than her and much heavier, but she thought she'd do her best to catch him anyways. She put her hands out ready, but Draco stayed standing. He looked into her eyes, and he reached towards her, like she was his lifeline. She brought her own hands up to wind her fingers through his and gripped them tightly. As they looked at each other, she repeated the words like a prayer. I'm here. I'm with you, Draco. You're okay. Eventually, she saw his chest begin to slow its rapid jerks. His eyes softened. The wide-eyed panic began to leave them. His muscles relaxed slightly, and he was able to take full, deep breaths again. He let his forehead drop against hers and closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he said quietly, his lips centimeters from hers. It happens sometimes. I can't get my walls to come up and I can't breathe. Draco, please, don't apologize. It's okay, she said. wanting to wrap her arms around him, but she was scared of his injuries. "It's not your fault. Don't ever say sorry." She brought her hands up to his face instead, rubbing a gentle thumb over the soft skin on his cheeks. She couldn't stop herself from planting a soft, barely there kiss on his lips. They were so close to hers. She could feel his breath ghosting over her face, and she needed to kiss him. He didn't move. His eyes were closed as he continued to bring himself under control. "Draco," she whispered against his lips. "Oh, Draco, I love you so much." She saw his face contort, that pained expression there again, like her words were knives instead of the salve they were supposed to be. "Let me love you, Draco, please," she whispered, beginning to feel desperate. "Let me in. I've tried so hard to get back to you. Please stop pushing me away." She kissed him again, and this time he responded. She felt him begin to kiss her back. Their lips slid softly over each other's, tongues pushed into mouths. Hermione could feel wetness on her face, and she wasn't sure whose tears they were, but she didn't take her lips from his. Draco kissed her like he was drowning. The more they kissed, the more she felt the desperation in him rising, matching the desperation in her. His grip on her became tighter. His breath notched up again. His fingers came up, tangled through her curls, pulling her face to his. He pushed her now, the few steps to the wall, and then her back was flat against it. His thigh was firm between her legs, and all she could feel was the friction as she ground down onto him. She kissed him and kissed him and kissed him, pouring all of her love into his mouth, totally and utterly consumed by him. She realized it wasn't enough. She needed more. She brought her hands down to his belt buckle, her fingers clumsy as she pulled the leather from the metal, eventually sliding it through with a crack. There was barely any space between them, so he moved back 1/4 of an inch to give her the space to undo the button and slide the zipper of his black suit trousers down. She gasped as her knuckles grazed against the thick, hard length of him. Oh, Merlin. She wanted him, but he was intimidating. She'd never been with anyone even close to what she could feel now pressing hard against her. She brought her hand down to run a finger down the taut outline of him through his boxers, making him hiss in another breath. This time, not of pain. "Granger." Her name came through a clenched jaw. He pressed harder into her, and her ribcage barely had room to expand. She lifted his boxers over and down and gently wrapped her fingers around him, moving her wrist in long, steady strokes. He moaned into her ear, making her shiver, and her knees go weak. His own hand came down now to slide under the waistband of her shorts. She held her breath as he moved lower, trembling with anticipation. When his fingers finally slid where she needed them, she grounded down on him and heard him swear as he began moving his hips, rocking gently into her hand as he moved his fingers in delicious rhythm. Hermione buried her face into the soft skin at the base of Draco's neck and breathed him in. She had never experienced anything like the emotions swirling through her, combined with the way he was moving his fingers and the sound of his shaking breaths as his voice vibrated low into her ear. "Hermione, oh, fuck, he mumbled, and she shivered at the sound of her first name on his lips. It didn't take long before she could feel herself trembling, climbing. She could hear Draco's breathing growing unsteady too, his movements stuttering. She tightened her grip around him and tried not to let her rhythm falter. She became aware of the entire room beginning to vibrate, Glasses rattled, her bed frame shook, a picture fell off the wall, and she felt an unbelievable pressure building up around him. The power of it seemed to flow out from Draco and into her. She let her head drop back as she allowed herself to give into it, rising and riding the wave as he did. She felt like she was going to lose control, like it was almost too much for her, as she felt his whole body stiffen, and suddenly both of them were crying out, shaking violently into each other's arms as they gave into the sensation, their breaths mingling as they moaned each other's names, trembling and twitching, their eyes squeezed shut. Draco held her tightly as he shuddered against her, the aftershocks radiating out of him. Hermione felt like she might die right there and then. She pulled him to her as hard as she could, realizing she opened her eyes that they were both now dabbed in blood that had leaked through his shirt. It was smeared on their faces across her chest. Draco's eyes opened too, bloodshot and stormy. But she couldn't see pain there, only a slightly blurry sort of pleasure. His chest continued hitching whilst he came down from where she had taken him. He smiled at her, his lips quirking in a beautiful, satisfied grin. You have no idea how long I've imagined doing that. I think I might have gotten a bit carried away, he said, his voice hoarse. She smiled back at him and kissed him gently. I hope it lived up to your expectations. He rolled his eyes. My imagination didn't even come close, Granger. He dipped his head to kiss her again, softly now, his teeth gently nipping at her bottom lip as he looked into her eyes. I think we might need to clean ourselves up, she said, suddenly feeling self-conscious as to what she imagined she looked like to him. He laughed quietly and stepped back from her, pulling his wand from his pocket and vanishing everything with a quick "Scourgify." Now they were calmer. Hermione let herself think more rationally. Draco, you're still bleeding. Please, will you let me clean your wounds a little? She asked him hesitantly, not knowing how he would react. He turned his eyes to her, and she breathed a sigh of relief that his earlier anger was nowhere in sight. The tension had gone slightly from his shoulders. She wondered how long it had been building in him. He didn't answer, but came to sit on bed, looking at her slightly suspiciously as he did. He allowed her to gently remove his shirt, and she forced herself not to react as she saw his injuries again. She clenched her jaw and willed him not to glance up to see the tears in her eyes. She carefully ran her wand over the cuts, whispering an incantation she had learned, a more subtle version of the vulnero sentinel that Snape had used on him on that dreadful day. She watched as the blood stopped seeping, and the wounds began to look slightly less raw. She saw Draco's tensed shoulders begin to relax slightly. He never made a sound, didn't react, although she knew she must be causing him some pain. He was right, she thought. He was an expert at bleeding. When she'd finally finished, he reached out his hand and pulled her to him. She stepped between his thighs as he sat on the bed. He wrapped his arms around her waist, his head against her chest. She let her own head drop and buried her face into the tangle of his blonde hair, breathing in the intoxicating scent of him. Thank you, she heard him whisper, for everything. She kissed the top of his head into his hair. No, thank you, Draco. What are we going to do? She stroked the soft strands, felt his breath warm against her body through the thin material of her pajamas. I've got a plan. We can keep your mother safe too. He looked up at her, and the guarded hope in his eyes hurt her heart. She stepped gently out of his arms and sat next to him on the bed. Lie with me, she said. It must be almost morning. Let's go through it. And they lay next to each other, fingers linked as she explained her plan to him. She watched the hope dance in his cool gray eyes, and she prayed she could be the one to let that spark catch a light and burn. They stayed there all night, talking. It took hours to convince him that she could look after herself and that her defensive skills and her wand work were good enough. She told Draco gently what she knew about Snape, that he was a double agent, that he was working with the Order. She saw his eyes go wide, taking the implications. Salazar. No wonder he's so good at occlumency is all I can say, Draco muttered, and she watched him go through their interactions in his mind, his face drawn in concentration as he thought about all the times Snape had helped him and then lied to him, she imagined. She told him to go to Snape in the morning, to tell him to find a way to get Narcissa out of the manor and somewhere safe. It was doubtful anyone would notice she was gone with the size of the manor. Also, Narcissa's drunkenness meant she often took to her room for hours. Once Draco opened the cabinet, she would go up and wait for Dumbledore, telling him what was going to happen before Draco got there, giving him time to summon the Order so the Death Eaters could be brought under control. No one needed to die. Draco would play his part perfectly. No suspicion fell on him. Hermione wished Dumbledore wasn't away so she could give him more warning. She knew from Draco's memories that he had been away until just before the altercation in the tower. Draco would need to buy her enough time between shooting the sparks and bringing the Death Eaters up to the tower. It took a while to convince him, but she could see how desperately he wanted their plan to work. What will I do if Snape says no? He asked her. She looked at him, a small smile at her lips. Draco, you forget I've seen what you can do. I know how powerful your magic is. I don't know if you realize, but no one can say no to you if you don't want them to. You call the shots. Your father spent his life trying to take power away from you, but all he's done is give you more. You're strong, Draco. You're terrifying. He snapped his eyes to her. You're scared of me. I'm not. But other people should be. Stop letting other people make you feel less, Draco. You are unbelievably intelligent, immensely powerful, and you've overcome so much. You are incredible, and you can do this. She could tell her words weren't sinking in. He didn't believe her. He couldn't after all he'd been put through. She promised herself there and then that once they got through tomorrow, she'd spend the rest of her life letting him know how amazing he really was. Eventually, he seemed to be at peace with their plan. They'd gone through it time and time again. Hermione smiled as he wrapped his long body around hers, his face tucked into her collarbone, and she slowly heard his breathing begin to even out, his inhales and exhales getting gradually longer. She kissed him, small, soft kisses over every part of him she could reach. She couldn't sleep. She was scared to, in case it kicked her out of the memory. She just lay, stroking his hair back from his forehead, her eyes taking in the way his lips pouted in sleep. His eyelashes fluttered on his cheeks. Hermione let the hours pass and she watched him, thinking of the way he had done the same thing with her the first time they had lived through this night together. Draco woke just before dawn. He sat bolt upright, scaring the life out of Hermione. His eyes were wild, and he was on his feet before she'd even registered what happened. He looked at her for a moment like he was checking she was really there. She looked back at him, blinking, waiting for him to move, unsure of how he was feeling. After a moment, he crossed the room to her, and then his lips were hot on hers as he covered her with desperate, searing kisses, stealing her breath once more. Just as she began pulling him on top of her to lay down, he suddenly pulled back and moved away from her slightly, looking like it was an incredible effort for him to do so. Granger, can you occlude? He asked, looking worried. Yes, Draco, I can. Thank fucking God. You're going to need to, he said. You need to hide me, Granger. It's important. Hide all the memories of me before you came back and last night. She nodded. She understood why he was so concerned. Shall I show you what I do? He asked. The way I keep you from Voldemort? She swallowed and nodded, then sat next to him and listened as he told her about his scrolls, about how he wrote his memories on them mentally, and then rolled them up tight and pushed them back into the recesses of his mind, bringing simpler, more innocuous memories to the front. She listened to the deep cadence of his voice, and she concentrated as hard as she could to do exactly as he said, following his instructions. When she was ready, she closed her eyes and focused hard. She conjured her own mental scrolls, writing down every detail of what happened in her life since Draco had died. She wrote them meticulously, the same way she wrote her case notes. Then she rolled them up as tightly as she could and pushed them as far back in her mind as they would go, just like he told her. They sat together on her bed, their backs straight, their hands on their thighs, and they occluded. Draco's eyes clouded, became a gray, stormy day. Hermione's changed from a clear honey brown to a darker shade, a murky riverbed. By the time they both jumped in surprise when Padma knocked on Hermione's locked door at 8 a.m., they were ready. Hermione shouted to Padma that she'd overslept, and she spent her last 10 minutes with Draco, letting him worship her with his hands and his mouth, holding him to her and trying not to let him see her cry. Eventually, they couldn't put it off anymore. She gave him one last kiss as he disillusioned and followed her out through the portrait hole. She strained her eyes, trying to make him out as he made his way back to the Slytherin common room. It took all she had not to go after him. They saw each other a few times that day. Draco completely ignored her. He looked through her like she didn't exist. It made her heart hurt, even though she knew why he did it. Eventually, about 6 o'clock, she went back to her room. She spent some time filling in her notes. Then she cast the powerful locking spell Draco had shown her over them. Their names wound into the spell: Dracus Lucius Malfoy and Hermione Jean Granger. No one who wasn't her or Draco could open them now. It was impossible. She put them into her bag, then shrunk them all down, along with Draco's memories, and transfigured the bag into a canvas satchel to make it easier to carry. She holstered her wand. Then she took a deep breath and went to the window to wait for Draco's signal. Hermione felt like she was going to vomit when she eventually saw the green sparks shoot up into the black sky above the astronomy tower. Draco had given the signal. It was time. She hoped that she had managed to get the message to Snape. She disillusioned herself, cast a silencing charm, and began to move. She took the steps 2 at a time, praying that Draco's distraction of telling the Death Eaters where she supposedly would be in a usual deserted part of the school would work. As she arrived in the astronomy tower, she was relieved to see Dumbledore there. He looked tired, and she realized how old he truly was. He was holding a withered hand to his side. His face was gray. The wind was blowing through the astronomy tower, a storm brewing outside. She allowed herself to become visible again. "Miss Granger!" Dumbledore exclaimed, and his surprise was evident. She knew he'd been expecting Draco. "You need to leave here at once. This isn't safe for you." "Forgive me, Professor. I do understand, but I need you to listen to me." "No, Miss Granger, you need to listen to me. Something very bad is about to happen here. I do not want you anywhere near when it does. I already have one of my students in grave danger, caught up in something he cannot control. I do not want a second. Please go back to your dormitory and stay there." "Professor, I'm actually here for Draco." Dumbledore paused. His sharp blue eyes snapped to Hermione. "He needs help, Professor. Voldemort is threatening his family, his life. He wants him to," she swallowed, "to kill you. And if he doesn't, he'll kill him and his mother." "And you know this how, Miss Granger?" Dumbledore's eyes kept flicking to the door, like they had done in the memory. Somehow he knew they were coming. "Because I've seen this before, Professor. It's a long story, but I have watched these events play out. Currently, we are within an alterable memory. I've come back through the memory using a pensive from 2006 to try and save you, to save Draco." She saw realization dawn in Dumbledore's eyes. "You have used Anima Adamantino." He looked grave. "Oh, Miss Granger, that is very dark magic indeed." Dumbledore looked at her imploringly. "Why? Why did you do it? What did you give for it?" "I did it to save Draco," she said. "He doesn't deserve this. I did it to save you, to stop a war that will break out in the aftermath of today." Her voice was desperate. Why is he asking so many questions instead of just listening to her? Dumbledore almost seemed to be stalling. "Miss Granger, attempting to change the course of history is very dangerous. Every small thing you change can impact something else." "I understand that, Professor, but I couldn't let him die. Please, please help me to help Draco. I love him." Dumbledore had almost seemed resigned to Draco's attack, almost like it was preordained. Hermione could see that she had taken him by surprise. His shoulders slumped. He looked even more tired. "What would you have me do, Miss Granger?" "Leave the tower, now. Summon the Order. Ensure the Resistance members are here and ready to fight. There are currently 4 Death Eaters within the castle. Draco is holding them off. They are looking for me." She saw Dumbledore's sharp glance towards her and headed off his question. "They want to take me back to Voldemort. He wants to use me, to use my knowledge of Harry and my academic skills to turn me into a spy, to use my body for fun. Draco killed them all to save me the last time. Bellatrix killed you. It triggered an attack on the castle." She could see the horror dawn in Dumbledore's face. He turned towards the stairwell, and Hermione felt hope stir in her heart. He was listening. He was leaving. Dumbledore didn't get far. He stumbled, falling down onto his knees, dropping his wand. He was weaker than Hermione had realized. She moved across the floor to help him up, and as she did, she heard the sound that chilled her to the bone. She had taken too long. She could hear running footsteps on the stairs. Draco appeared first, and his eyes widened at the sight of her crouched next to Dumbledore. He instantly reacted, wandlessly disillusioning her again and casting a protego she felt surround her like a silk sheet. Draco's face was pale, his eyes like saucers. Something had gone wrong downstairs, too. They'd come too quickly. She could sense he was struggling to keep calm. Less than a second later, she heard Bellatrix's high-pitched cackle as she appeared out of the gloom at the stairwell of the tower. Greyback and Lestrange skulking behind her. "Well, look what we have here." "Well done, Draco." Bellatrix's voice was like venom leaching out from between her lips. She moved into the room behind him, prancing on the balls of her feet, and planted a kiss on Draco's cheek. Draco stayed frozen, his eyes on Dumbledore on the spot where she was crouched at his side. Bellatrix took in Dumbledore, collapsed on the floor, and her features filled with a sick kind of joy. "Ah, I see you've gotten started without us. Good boy, Draco," she purred, her blackened teeth bared as she grinned. She looked utterly unhinged as she stalked closer to Draco, who had now drawn his wand, playing his part. His eyes were wide, the panic there making the silver shine like glass. Bellatrix's hair trailed across his neck as she leaned in close to his face. Draco kept his wand trained on Dumbledore, but the tip of it shook as she put her mouth close to his ear, her dry lips moving across his skin as she hissed, "Do it, Draco." Greyback came into view, his back hunched, teeth glittering in the moonlight coming through into the astronomy tower.
"He doesn't have the stomach, just like his father. Let me finish him my own way."
"No!" Bellatrix shrieked. "The Dark Lord was clear. The boy is to do it. This is your moment. Do it! Go on, Draco! Now!" Hermione watched in horror as Draco narrowed his eyes and leveled his wand back at Dumbledore's heart. Bellatrix giggled as she danced from foot to foot, her eyes wild. Draco raised his wand. The Death Eaters encroached. There was suddenly a noise from the stairwell. Was it Crouch? Hermione looked towards the stairwell. They all did, except Draco, who was frozen. He didn't know what to do. This hadn't been the plan. Now he was in the same situation as before, except Hermione was in the line of fire. All his occlusion ability from the last memory had abandoned him. Draco was lost. Hermione looked. She heard the noise again, but there was nothing there. Bellatrix heard it too. She hissed and aimed her wand at the stairwell. "Revelio!" she screeched. And it took everything Hermione had not to scream herself as Harry abruptly came into view. The invisibility cloak slipping from his shoulders. In his hand he held the Marauder's map. Hermione looked at it in horror. She let her mind quickly play over what had happened. She hadn't been at dinner. Harry would have looked for her. He'd seen her here in the astronomy tower, alongside Dumbledore's name, Draco's, and the Death Eaters. And Harry, oh brave, stupid Harry, had come here to try and save her. "Harry Potter!" Bellatrix was positively incandescent. She screeched and clapped her hands together, her curls bouncing wildly. "What are you doing here? Come to save your precious Dumbledore? Well, you're too late. Draco has already gotten to him. He'll be dead soon, and you'll be easy pickings for the Dark Lord." She stalked towards Harry, who backed up slightly, his wand held up. "Harry," Dumbledore called weakly. "Don't." But it was too late. The words left Harry's mouth before she could even register that they were going to. "Where's she, Malfoy?" he shouted. Draco flinched hard. He turned his eyes to Harry, his wand still on Dumbledore. She could see the message he was trying to convey. Stop, don't say it. But he did. "I know she's up here, Malfoy. I can see her name on the map. What have you done with her? Where have you hidden Hermione?" The other two Death Eaters immediately sprang into action, prowling the room, looking for her, sending spells into the dark shadows of the tower. Bellatrix kept her eyes on Harry, the whites showing around her dark irises as she stared fixedly at him. Hermione jolted as Harry let out an anguished sob. "I swear to God, Malfoy, if you hurt her, I'll—" "Stop, Potter!" Draco roared. The astronomy tower shuddered, the same dull boom Hermione had heard in the memory pulsing through the room. Everyone tipped, almost falling. Hermione let out a small cry, the shock and power of the movement scaring her. In a flash, Bellatrix's eyes were on the spot where she was. "Revelio!" she screamed again, and suddenly Hermione could see herself, her hands, arms, and legs as both the disillusionment charm and the protego wore off her. Draco's eyes flicked to her and then squeezed shut. She felt like she could see his last shred of composure give way. The panic on his face was clear to see by anyone who looked. She silently willed him to get himself under control. "Another one!" Bellatrix cackled, and she clapped her hands together. Oh, Draco, the Dark Lord will be so proud of you. You've done so well. The Mudblood, Dumbledore, and Potter all where we need them. You are the best little servant, aren't you? Bellatrix now began moving towards Hermione. Come here, Mudblood. Don't be shy. Hermione tried to dart away, and Bellatrix danced after her, laughing maniacally. Granger, don't run! The words were out of Draco's mouth before he could seem to stop himself. Hermione watched the realization dawn on the Death Eaters' faces at once. They knew Draco was protecting her. Greyback snarled and dived at her. He was dead before he even made a step. Draco had cursed him from where he stood, flicking his palm up towards him. Hermione couldn't see Harry. She thought he must be back under the cloak. She could hear his footsteps, but couldn't see where he was. Everything moved in slow motion then. Bellatrix whirled away from Hermione and lunged towards Dumbledore, who was reaching for his wand. Hermione heard Harry's curse from beneath the cloak and saw a flash of green light shoot out from the darkened corner. Bellatrix fell. Her eyes went blank and she was dead. The stranger's curse flew towards the empty space with frightening speed. Hermione heard the roar of his Avada Kedavra. Just as she shot her own matching curse at Lestrange, she watched the green light fly from the end of her wand and Rabiston fell. Hermione didn't know if Harry had been hit by the curse. There had been too much noise to hear. She couldn't see him, couldn't detect any movement. Hermione didn't see, and she didn't hear Barty Crouch as he dived into the room, a terrifying grin on his face. His wand pointed firmly at her heart, and he screamed the killing curse. Hermione didn't see Draco move. She didn't see him dive, but she felt his body as he fell on top of her. She watched Barty Crouch's curse hit him, square in his back as he threw himself forward at astonishing speed, his body covering hers. She didn't notice Dumbledore's own weak curse kill Barty Crouch. Didn't hear Severus Snape's running footsteps as he entered the room, hissing as he surveyed the carnage. All she saw was Draco. His body had gone limp, his weight heavy on her as she lay under him. His eyes were still locked on hers, the bright, clear silver, fading even as she scrambled to gather him to her. Draco! Draco! She screamed, but the light had already gone. No! Please! Oh, no, Draco! She scrambled to sitting and pulled him with her. She tried to lift him up to bring him close to her, but his head lolled loosely backwards, his eyes staring unseeing up at the starry sky above the astronomy tower. Hermione jolted him desperately as though she could wake him. She stared into Draco's beautiful blank face and felt the threads of her sanity begin to slip away. She'd failed. All she had done was kill him quicker. She screamed and she wailed and she wept over him, kissing his face over and over again, even as she could feel him growing colder in her arms. A blue tinge appeared around his lips, even as she continued to kiss him. She cried when Snape came to her and tried to loosen her arms from his body. He had tears on his own face. We need to go, Miss Granger. Now, he said firmly. There are more Death Eaters in the castle. Hermione became dully aware of the sound of thuds, a loud banging from below them, the creaking noise of the castle doors giving way. But she didn't care. She couldn't care because Draco was dead. She tried to reach for him, even as Snape picked her up bodily and began running with her out of the room. She realized Dumbledore had already gone. Snape must have already taken him to the medical wing. She was so distressed that she didn't realize for a moment what the dull thud was as Snape's foot hit something on the ground as they were leaving the astronomy tower. He stopped and looked down, and she realized he had kicked something. Snape put her down and bent, feeling around for what was there. The horrifying, desperate knowledge of what he had kicked entered Hermione's mind a nanosecond before Snape pulled off the cloak. Hermione's mind folded in on itself, and she looked into the cold, dead eyes of another boy that she loved. Harry Potter also lay dead on the floor of the astronomy tower. His body had come to rest a few feet away from the body of his arch-enemy, Draco Malfoy. Hermione screamed and screamed. She raked her nails down her cheeks as she realized she had done this to them. She had killed them both. Snape was frozen in horror, understanding dawning on him now, too. "No," he whispered. "Oh, no." He was still for a moment as the horror of the situation came over him. She knew that Snape wouldn't mourn Harry the way he would Draco, but Harry's death would have huge repercussions for everyone. Snape seemed to have to force himself to move. He motioned for Hermione to move again, and as she did, she heard the glass vials in her backpack tinkle against each other. She let out a breath as the realization formed in her mind. "Dumbledore's office," she said, her eyes locked on Snape's dark ones. Snape was lost in his grief. He was confused. "Miss Granger." "Get me there now! Please, Professor! I can undo this! I can stop it from happening! Please get me there!" Snape didn't question her. He disillusioned them both. Then he took her hand and they ran, dodging Death Eaters as they sprinted through the school. Hermione smelled smoke, and she knew they didn't have much time. As they got to the office, Snape didn't hesitate. He blasted the wall with a Bombarda Maxima, and Hermione ran through the gap. She didn't know how much time she had. She had to go back to an earlier memory before it was too late. Draco and Harry were both dead. She couldn't live with that. She'd rather be dead herself. Her fingers trembled as she selected the memory she needed from her bag and ran to Dumbledore's Pensive. She heard running feet beyond the hole in the wall, but she barely registered. Snape stood, his back to her, as he fought off the encroaching Death Eaters as she tipped one drop of the Animatino in. She kept her eyes on the swirling liquid, willing it to turn clear. The last thing she saw before she dipped her head in was Severus Snape falling to the ground and Corbin Yaxley diving towards her, before she held onto the sides and pushed her face into the memory, falling down and away from Hogwarts. Well, lots of steamy stuff this time. What do you guys think so far? What do you think is going to happen next? Okay, so far, she's in typical Hermione fashion, messed everything up because she's trying to overcorrect something. And it just proves that our perfect golden girl is not always so perfect. And now she's changed the course of history. What do you think is going to happen next? What could happen next? Let me know your thoughts below. Like and subscribe. Like I said, I'm going to try to get these out more regularly. My schedule should be more even now, but hope you enjoyed this one. It was a long one, but a goodie as far as plot development goes. So until next time.